Will the Social Security Administration accept the opinion of my physical therapist or occupational therapist in my Social Security disability claim? The Social Security Administration is only going to accept the opinions about you and your functional abilities from acceptable medical sources. For example, the Social Security Administration will accept the opinions of physicians, osteopaths, podiatrists, and optometrists. They won't accept the opinions of chiropractors, for example. But what about the opinion of a physical therapist or an occupational therapist? Now, I will tell you that your physical therapy or occupational therapy records are crucial because it's going to document the nature of your symptoms, your response to treatment, and they may even comment on your functional restrictions and limitations. But they're not acceptable medical sources under Social Security rules or regulations. Again, that doesn't mean that what your physical therapist or occupational therapist has to say isn't important. I think the summaries, the evaluations, and treatment notes are relevant. But ultimately, we want your physician to comment on your functionality. Now, one of the important things that a physical therapist can document is range of motion in the various joints. And these measurements can be helpful to establish at step 3 that you meet a medical listing based on a certain loss of range of motion. That's where the physical therapist records are, in my opinion, important, because the Social Security Administration is using that book of listing of impairments to determine whether or not you meet step 3 of the 5-step sequential evaluation. And the range of motion is one of those measurements that the Social Security Administration is going to be looking at. So if you have a problem with your back, your knee, your hip, your shoulder, we want to make sure that your physical therapist is doing range of motion measurements and that those are documented in the medical records together with your symptoms and your response to the treatment and your pain levels. Those sorts of things are important, and therefore you should be giving your physical therapist or occupational therapist a history of your symptoms, a description of your past work, the difficulties you had performing those duties, your current functionality, and problems with things like sitting, standing, walking, stooping, bending, and lifting. Now, the physical therapist will also be reporting whether or not you've been compliant with therapy and whether there's been any improvement. Physical therapists like to say there's been improvement when, quite frankly, there hasn't, but that's one of the ways they justify their services. You need to be careful about what it is you're reporting in terms of the nature of the improvement, particularly if it's temporary. You may have good days, you may have bad days. It may be that the treatment isn't particularly long-lasting. You need to make sure that your medical records are documenting that. Ultimately, the Social Security Administration has to determine whether or not you have a significant impairment, and the physical therapist records can go to that. If you have any questions about your rights to Social Security disability benefits or the role of your physical therapist, call us today at 727-894-3188 for a complimentary consultation.